As the Bombing of Darwin commemorations draw near, there's also recognition other parts of northern Australia also came under attack. When a person was killed in Katherine during the war, it showed the Japanese could penetrate deep into the Australian mainland, as Stephen Schubert reports.
Barely a month after Darwin was decimated, a formation of Japanese bombers appeared 300 kilometres further south over Katherine.
On the 22nd, about 12:20, Katherine was bombed by 9 planes, and roughly between 89 and 92 bombs were dropped in this particular area right where we're standing today.
In 1942, the town was a tiny dot on the map with only a few hundred residents. Simone Croft's grandfather was working in the top end, at first in Darwin.
He actually was up a telegraph pole the day that the Japanese flew in and let go all their bombs, so he actually seen that from a telegraph pole and he knew that his family had been killed.
Then in Katherine, where his job was to restore crucial communications after the town was bombed.
He came to visit the day after, and basically the men were pretty horrified. They were in shock that Katherine was actually bombed.
The scars of the bombing raid are still visible.
This particular crater here has been here since 1942, and it's the best example. There is other ones, but not as good. This was the main area where most of the people got hurt.
One civilian died. It's thought these are the shrapnel marks from the bomb that killed him. Despite the bombs falling around Katherine's airfield, it might not have been the intended target.
This is Mambaloo Airfield, 20 minutes drive out of Katherine. Nowadays, the runway forms part of a driveway to a mango farm, but during World War II, it was a major base in northern Australia. It's thought it was the true target of the attacks on Katherine, but the Japanese missed their mark, and Mambaloo survived with barely a scratch.
The Japanese raids lasted 2 years and spread across the north from Western Australia to Queensland. But after the initial destruction, the raids became much less effective.
The reason for that was that the Japanese were forced, because of the fighter defence, to bomb from quite high altitude in those subsequent raids.
At first, the defence relied on 3 US squadrons of P-40 Kitty Hawks. But by the start of the 1943 bombing season, 3 Spitfire squadrons had been brought in from the UK, 2 of them made up of experienced Australian pilots.
It meant that Australians were personally taking charge of the defence of Australia's northern frontier, and as well as that, the presence of the British squadron was powerful propaganda for imperial solidarity.
Aviation historian Anthony Cooper says there should be more recognition of the achievements of the Royal Australian Air Force, from building an elaborate network of air bases to holding their own against the Japanese in the air.
There's so much attention upon the Great Raid on the 19th of February 1942 that pretty well everything that happened afterwards has fallen into the shade.
It was that air defence which would prove crucial in shifting the momentum of the war. Stephen Schubert, ABC News, Katherine.